Welcome to tonight's virtual meeting of the Port Phillip City Council Planning Committee. The City of Port Phillip respectfully acknowledges the Yalukit Willam clan of the Boomerang. We pay our respects to their elders, both past and present, and we acknowledge and uphold their traditional relationship to this land. Tonight's meeting is being held via the Webex platform and streamed via Council's webcast page. Whilst we have planned for this online meeting, there always remains the risk of technical issues arising that are beyond our control. If we experience technical difficulties tonight, we will adjourn the meeting for a short time to resolve the issue. If the issue cannot be resolved and the meeting cannot continue, then we'll adjourn to tomorrow evening and details will be circulated to the public as early as possible. Meeting processes have been altered by a resolution of Council to hear all submissions from members of the public at the start of the meeting. Additionally, voting on all motions will be under division, where the Chair will call upon councillors individually in rotating alphabetical order to state their vote. So we'll head to the agenda now. First up is apologies, and councillors, do we have any apologies? Don't think there is any, but I note that Councillor Brand has not arrived just yet, so we will just keep an eye on that at this point in time. Oh, there he is, Councillor Brand.
I am here, I'm sorry, I had trouble finding my way.
Councillor Brand, you might want to turn around your screen.
Good idea.
Yep. Now we'll go to the second item on the agenda, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. And councillors, the minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 27th of May 2020, have been circulated. Are there any questions relating to these minutes? I note there are none. So can I have a motion to confirm these minutes, please? Councillor Crawford to move. Do I have a seconder? And Councillor Bond to second. Thank you. So now I'll put that motion under division and call upon each councillor for your vote. So Councillor Baxter?
For.
Councillor Bond?
For.
Councillor Brand?
For.
Councillor Copsey?
For.
Councillor Crawford?
For.
Councillor Gross?
For.
Councillor Pearl?
In favour.
Councillor Simic?
For.
Thank you. And Councillor Voss, for. That motion is unanimously carried. Councillor Brand, I'm just wondering if you could just check on your screen, please, because I can see not you.
Well, I can't, yes, I'm just having trouble getting the proper video, the proper shot up.
Okay.
Okay, somebody's calling me.
Yep.
We'll work it out
Right.
behind the scenes.
Thank you. Just go on mute. Thank you. So we'll go to item 3, which is declarations of conflicts of interest. Does anyone have a conflict in a matter being discussed at tonight's meeting?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor, if I could. Marcus Pearl here.
Bill?
Yeah, thanks very much. I, Councillor Marcus Pearl, am the owner of a property for which the planning permit was issued in accordance with the schedule of delegation and is listed in attachment 1 of report 6.4. This is a direct conflict of interest. When the matter is heard, I will remove myself from the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Pearl. And councillors, just for ease of just the flow of the meeting, I'm going to hear that item last on the agenda. So now we'll go to item 4, which is public question time and submissions. And so now we'll hear all public questions and comments on report items from the members of the public. All requests to speak were required to be submitted by 4 p.m. this afternoon. And at the time of registering to speak, submitters were given the option to join the Webex meeting virtually and ask their questions live during the meeting, or have an officer read their statement on their behalf. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think there's 9 people that have requested to speak or have their comments made on their behalf. So first up, I'd like to call upon Dominic Zeng, please, speaking to item 6.2, which is 54 to 60 St Kilda Road, St Kilda. Welcome, and if you'd state your name again and your suburb, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Dominic, yes, please state your name again and your suburb for the record.
Sure. Dominic Zhang from Blackburn. So I'm from Spacious Group, the owner and applicant of the 54 to 60 St Kilda Road, St Kilda.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
So we would like to thank you all the officers, including the planning departments, urban design and traffic engineers, for their well-considered report and recommendation. So we note the followed on from productive community consultation meeting back in 24th of Feb 2020, which was chaired by Andrew Bond. Following this meeting, the project team undertook further consultation with a number of submitters and with the council planning officers, which resulted in revised plan, which are before you this evening. So in terms of planning, we have sought to follow the previous permitted envelope and have relocated the main entrance from Charnwood Road to St Kilda Road to activate the St Kilda Road South streetscape. And we have also commissioned Rekorani, the local artist, to develop a custom artwork. Will commence outside the entrance. We have also offers premium end-of-trip facilities located off the entrance lobby. So we are keen to deliver a quality office building in the neighborhood of the landmark destination. So we have noted a number of offices along the St Kilda Road Boulevard have been converted into residential apartments. So as the extension part, we would like to upgrade and elevate the current 2-level offices building as an appealing option for professional services, which is entirely consistent with the commercial 1 zoning of the land. So we have sought to provide large floor plates over 7 levels with balconies, including a significant green presence to distinguish 54 to 60 St Kilda Road, St Kilda from traditional suburban office. So delivering a total curated experience for future tenants. So I think the proposal will strongly benefit the local community, boost the local economy, and create more jobs. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to delivering these exciting new offices projects in accordance with officers' recommendation. Thank you.
Mayor, you're on mute. Thank you, Councillor Crawford. Thank you very much, Mr. Zeng. I now call upon John Kaufman speaking to item 6.3, which is 5 Prentice Street, St Kilda East. Welcome, Mr. Kaufman.
Welcome. Thank you so much, Mayor, and thank you all, everyone at the Council. Firstly, this is a statement on behalf of 5 Prentice Street. I've lived in 17 Prentice Street, which is a 2-street frontage with Leslie Street, for the last 10 years. My children have purchased a block in Prentice Street, and to be close to me, and more importantly, to be close to their younger sister, since family is very important to us. We've never had an issue with car parking over the 10 years, except on the odd occasion of the pub down the road holding a major event, which is usually over in 2 hours. This is not anecdotal evidence, but objective evidence supported by photographs provided to Council and the town planning. I understand 3 independent expert car parking demand assessment reports also confirm this does the detailed assessment from town planning, the amendment proposed will have no adverse impact on the amenity or the on-street parking of viability in Leslie and Prentice Street. Since moving into Prentice Street, I've met a number of neighbours who all own property in the street who have also supported the application, and they have done this in submission initially with town planning and now have asked me to read their further support tonight. I note their names and surnames and their support. I believe this is... I've been an owner for the last 40 years. I've noticed that there's been aware of the problem of finding street parking in both Prentice Street, and I don't think this will occur at all. And I think we should support the application, as I understand, have the objective reports and the council town planners. Then from Frank Torcussi, I've been the owner for the past 7 years. I've not noticed or been made aware of any problems with finding car parking in the street in both Prentice and Leslie, and I don't think this will change the approval, and I support the application, as I understand, have the objective reports of the council and town planners. Then there's Rosie Katsikas. She again supports it, and she's been living there for 10 years. There's also Danny Gluck, who's he said, I've been the owner for a number of years. I've not noticed or been made aware of any problems with finding any car parking or off-street parking. I therefore do not expect there to be any amenity change for the car parking for residents and visitors in Prentice Street and Leslie Street, and will not negatively impact on the approval of the application. So I support the application, as have the council, town planners, and the objective reports. The last one is from Rosario Thompson, and she again states the same thing. I'd like to thank most again the town planners for their extensive report with regards to the sort of application, and I think that, and I look forward to the councillors supporting this application moving forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. I now call upon Simon Kaufman, speaking to item 6.3, 5 Prentice Street, St Kilda East. Welcome. Update your name and suburb, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Simon Kaufman, currently of St Kilda. I'm the applicant with respect to town planning application for 5 Prentice Street. Thank you to all the councillors for hearing me in these difficult and unusual times. At the outset, I want to say that I respectfully request that the councillors adopt the recommendations set out in the report prepared by the expert town planning department and approve the application. I'd like to touch on my background and why this application was made. My sister Veronica and I purchased the land at 5 Prentice Street in 2014. We're not developers. We purchased this land because our family, including our little sister, now 8 years old, live in Prentice Street, and our dream was to move in to live close to our family. Our design is for the construction of 2 dwellings, one for each of us. One unit faces Leslie Street and the other faces Prentice Street. Each dwelling has 2 bedrooms and 1 off-street car space. The design was approved and the construction is now almost complete. We were not married at the time this design was approved. A 2-bedroom unit was more than sufficient for our working lifestyles. Since then, our lives and goals have changed. I am married and now have a baby daughter. Accordingly, I've made this application to split the large 2nd bedroom in each dwelling into 2 rooms so as to accommodate the growing families. There's no change to the built form or to the windows in this application. We're seeking a dispensation from providing a 2nd off-street car parking space for each dwelling. My wife and I, as I've said, currently live in St Kilda on Carlisle Street. We're environmentally conscious and are able to share 1 car due to the abundance of public transport connectivity in the area. The off-street parking provided at the dwellings is more than sufficient for our needs, even with an extra bedroom. I've obtained 3 independent expert car parking demand assessment reports, as I wanted to verify the concerns of the objectors as they will soon be my neighbours. The objective evidence in each of the 3 expert reports is conclusive. That is, the amendment proposed will have no adverse impact on the amenity or on the on-street parking availability in Leslie and Prentice Streets. The report said that on-street parking is available in both streets in the critical overnight period, if it was required. It is not correct, as the objectors have assumed, that a corollary of adding 1 bedroom to a dwelling is that there will be a greater demand for on-street parking. Based on Bureau of Statistics data, car ownership is impacted by whether there is an increase in footprint size of the development and whether the development is well supported by public transport. There will be no change in the footprint or the floor area of each dwelling under this application. Due to the excellent public transport connectivity, we're unlikely to need more than one off-street car parking space in any event. These opinions support my observations over the last 9 years as to available parking in both streets. No objector has provided any independent evidence to support their objections. All objections are based on subjective views and, with respect, should be given less weight by Council in making a decision as compared to the independent views expressed in the 3 expert reports furnished. Council's Town Planning Department has recognised that the application fits within Port Phillip's planning policies and that there is compelling expert evidence to justify supporting this application. I hope that the councillors will adopt the recommendation of the Town Planning Department and approve the application. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. I now call upon Joseph Indomenico, speaking to item 6.5, which is 11 to 41 Buckhurst Street, South Melbourne. Welcome, Mr. Domenico.
Thank you, Mayor Voss, and thank you everyone else for letting us talk tonight. So TRACT represents the applicant Alpha 14 Proprietary Limited with respect to the application in front of Council tonight. We'd like to express our sincere thanks and gratitude to the officers at Council who have worked with us in reaching this important milestone. The milestone is a result of an extensive and highly collaborative pre-lodgement and assessment process involving several workshops, discussions, email exchanges and phone calls. Importantly, council officers have been involved in each step of the process and, like others, they've influenced each decision that has been made by the project team. We stress that it wasn't until the state government and council officers indicated their in-principle support on the design concept that an application was made with the Minister for this important strategic site. It's our position that the application is entirely consistent with the planning scheme requirements relevant to the redevelopment of the site, as well as broader state and local policies, and as such should be supported by Council as per the clear and strong recommendation contained in the Planning Department's Delegate report. Given the time constraints, I'm not going to go through each aspect of the application. Rather, I'll just touch on our flood response, the affordable housing proposition and the overall height. So with regards to the flood response, the project team has been involved in several discussions and workshops with Melbourne Water, DELP, the Task Force and Council in relation to a precinct-wide solution to flood storage, street design and activation, specifically in Buckhurst Street and Buckhurst Lane. It's a complex issue, as everyone would be aware, and it's a precinct-wide matter that requires substantial and complex analysis. Whilst significant progress has been made by all relevant stakeholders, a final solution to this issue is yet to be secured. And because of this, we're forced to rely on the current statutory provisions and design a building that balances not only the flood mitigation objectives, but also the objectives in relation to active street frontage and accessibility. We've made it clear to all relevant stakeholders that a condition could be added to the permit that requires adjustments be made to the ground floor should a precinct-wide solution be secured. And we've also undertaken some initial design work to establish just what those adjustments would mean if the ground levels in Buckhurst Street were to be raised as part of a precinct-wide solution for flood management. And that analysis has determined that the adjustments can be made with ease and will not affect the fundamentals of the proposal more broadly. Affordable housing has been touched on in the delegate report. We're meeting the requirement. We're providing the 7 affordable houses and we're also providing 5 social houses as per the uplift requirement. As detailed within the delegate report, we've put forward 2 options to accommodate the affordable housing and we've worked really hard with the officers of late to discuss a 3rd option, which would be through a registered housing association. So we're confident that affordable housing at the site can be satisfied. With regards to the height, as the delegate report suggests, we're in area M5, and I'll read directly from the DDO. It states the area M5, predominantly mid-rise developments with some high-rise forms on larger sites where well-spaced slender towers can be demonstrated to provide sunlight access to streets, with a particular focus on Buckhurst Street incorporating a tooth and gap typology. The planning control defines mid-rise as buildings between 7 and 15 stories and high-rise buildings as greater than 16 stories. When we break down the preferred character statement for area M5, it is our position that we clearly satisfy the tests for a high-rise building at the site by way of the site being large. The substantial consolidation that has occurred to date has created a parcel in the order of 2,300 square metres. The tower forms are well spaced and slender and aligned with the task force's expectations and definition of what a slender tower is. We can take council to the advice provided by the task force as well as their formal referral response that is part of the application as well. And importantly, the building at its height does not overshadow the street, given that we're on the southern side. And more importantly, we don't overshadow future public open space areas nearby. Our application material clearly demonstrates that. In addition to the high-rise tests being met in the control, we also note that the height of the building is not in any way setting a precedent, as it's consistent with what's been approved and or under construction nearby. And that's clearly demonstrated in the delegate report at clause 6.12. We also note that any reduction in height will change the overall composition of mass, bulk and scale and will undermine the comprehensive analysis that's been done to date by the project team, council's planners, the state government and the task force. And finally, any reduction in height will also result in a reduction of social housing at the site, which clearly is something that we're very passionate about. So with that being said, we thank council for its assistance to date, its recommendation, and we fundamentally support the position that has been reached by the officers.
Thank you, Mr. Ndamiko. I have a question for you, and I know one of the other councillors have. So just before you jump offline, I wanted to ask specifically around the time period that you have nominated in your application for the affordability of the time frame. Our recommendation is 30. You've put forward 20. Just wondering why that is. If I could understand, please, what your rationale and logic is around 20 years.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So the rationale behind that is we've got a expert social housing, affordable housing consultant on our team, and we've been guided by their experience and response with respect to the time frame. So the advice that we've received is that time frame is acceptable. And therefore that is what we have proceeded on the basis of their expertise in this matter.
Thank you. Councillor Brand, you have a question as well from Mr. Ndamiko.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was just about your comments about the long-term prospect of perhaps raising the footpath levels and how that would be accommodated by your building. I just wanted to get an idea, which I haven't managed to see myself. At the moment, are your ground floor interiors with sufficient ceiling height, like if the lowest floor level were raised, it would still be like a generously sized internal volume and therefore sort of external presentation of the ground floor, etc. I'm just wondering how you would accommodate a raised footpath.
Sure, thanks for the question, and it's a really good question. So the way the site has been configured, the ground floor, floor to floor, is measuring 4.5 metres, but we've also, if you can gain access to the floor plans, you might see what's called a sacrificial edge provided along the frontage of the site. So that sacrificial edge, which is closest to the frontage of the site, is at a lower height. So we've got sufficient space within the floor to accommodate not only the sacrificial edge, which is at lower, but we've also got the level above that sacrificial edge, which is measuring at around 4.5 metres. So if in the event the street level or the footpath level is raised, we would still have a sufficient floor-to-floor on the ground floor to accommodate commercial tenancies or a variety of uses that can provide the activation that's anticipated in the control.
I'm really sorry to tell you, you've just joined me again. I've been the audio has been off for the last 20 seconds or something, and I didn't hear most of your answer. We were talking about. I was just commenting that I understood you had a sacrificial area at the front and a larger, not general area behind it.
Yeah. And
you were telling me about the floor-to-ceiling heights.
Sure. I'm sorry for cutting out there. Not sure what happened.
No, you didn't. There's something wrong with the audio system.
Okay. Well, I'm assuming you've got me now. So
yes.
I'll try and keep it simple. Basically, the ground floor has been configured with a floor-to-floor height, and I'm looking at the elevation right now. It's actually at 4.9 metres. So the 4.9 metre floor-to-floor height that we've put forward caters for the sacrificial edge along the frontage of the site, as well as the floor area towards the rear of that at 4.6 metres. So in the event that the street level is raised, we would generally have a ultimate floor-to-floor in the ground floor of around 4.6 metres, 4.5 metres, depending on the final level of the road.
Okay, thank you very much, in Domenico. Councillor Brand has gone offline again. He's having IT problems, I think, tonight.
Sure. If I need to provide a further submission on that, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, so we'll go to the next person now. Just make sure I've got the right one. So we'll go to Patrick Brennan, please, speaking to item 6.6, which is 134 Ferras Street, South Melbourne. Welcome, Mr. Brennan.
Thank you, Mayor Voss, and thank you, councillors. I'm an associate at Contour Consultants, and we represent the applicant, SunGuard Availability Services, and we had carriage of the original application up until the VCAT proceedings commenced. This proposal seeks to...
Actually, sorry, are you talking in behalf on Ferras Street or Buckhurst?
Ferras Street.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Yes. Sorry, am I okay?
Mayor, I'm afraid I just didn't get any of the end of that answer.
Yes. Councillor Brand, we have moved on to the next speaker.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Brennan.
Thanks. So look, the proposal relates to an amendment to an existing condition on the existing permit for the land. The amendment is being pursued due to a change in the proposed ownership or development model. It's proposed now to be a build-to-rent model, whereas when the permit was first issued, the intention was that it be built to sell and sold as market housing. Because of the proposed ownership arrangements, the current condition cannot be satisfied due to some of the wording, and it's for this reason that we sought to engage with the council in June last year to discuss the proposed amendments and to brief them on the proposed changes. However, we didn't receive any response to that, and we ultimately lodged the application formally with DELP in July. I'd just like to note that the report before the council suggests that the proposal is for an affordable housing for a period of 15 years. It is in fact for 20 years. That's what's been agreed with DELP and been agreed by our client, and I believe the council was made aware of that in April at some stage. So just I'll just provide a very quick summary of what essentially the affordable housing proposal would be, and that is that the 6% affordable housing would be maintained, and that is 6 of the proposed dwellings to be provided as affordable housing. The tenants would be selected in accordance with the established affordable housing eligibility criteria or in partnership with an existing affordable housing provider. So in essence, the intention would be that they are the exact same tenants as there would be under the current condition or in a market housing apartment. The apartments would be rented at rates that meet the test of affordable housing, consistent with the definition in the Planning and Environment Act and having regard to the income bands published by the state government and then specified in a subsection of the Planning and Environment Act. And as I said, the affordable housing period would be for 20 years. In terms of that 20-year figure, we say that in this instance, and there is discussion broadly about what an appropriate period is that's in terms of in the affordable housing space, and those discussions are ongoing throughout the industry. But in this instance, we say it's appropriate given that the owner will be responsible for maintenance of the affordable dwellings and common areas, maintenance and replacement of fixtures, fittings, furniture, appliances, maintenance of kitchens and things like that, and owners' corporation fees, which would ordinarily be passed on to a provider, but in this case don't exist. And the intention is that that requirement is enshrined in the proposed condition, and specifically it says the owner of the affordable housing dwellings would be responsible for owners' corporation costs, the management and maintenance of the building, etc., the ongoing management and maintenance of the individual apartments. The development on site has commenced, and upon completion, it would ultimately deliver 6 affordable units as set out above, as I just said, within the likelihood is the next 12 to 18 months is what our client has advised the development program is. The outcome, if council were to oppose the amendment, will be most likely a delay in this development due to the need to satisfy this condition prior to the issue of building consents and to provide our client with the certainty to proceed with the next steps in the construction program. And ultimately, a delay would lead to the delay of affordable housing on this site. That's all I have to say, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan. I have a question for you before you go.
Yes.
I'm wondering, after 20 years, what do you plan to do with the apartments?
Well, they would form one of, 6 of, I think 107 of the build-to-rent apartments. They would be held in ownership by a single entity. As to what would happen after that period, that would be up to the owner.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any questions for Mr. Brennan? I note that no, they don't. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Brennan.
Thanks.
Now I'd like to call upon Mr. Ben Cook, and he's speaking to item 6.2, which is 54 to 60 St Kilda Road, St Kilda. Welcome, Mr. Cook. If you'd state your name and suburb, please.
Thank you for the introduction. Good evening, Mayor Voss, and good evening, councillors. My name is Ben Cook. I'm from Tract and assisting the project team at 54 to 60 St Kilda Road in St Kilda. You've heard from a project team colleague, Dominic, who was submitted number 1, so I'll keep this second submission in support brief. Thank you again for your time, and we're here to support the 7-storey office building within a commercial zone along St Kilda Road, which includes an excellent end-of-trip facility with over 80 bicycle spaces on the ground floor, as well as ESD measures and excellent internal amenity to the office spaces. Of particular note, we're really pleased to have received positive feedback and support from Council's urban design team insofar as the architectural response of this proposal. and we welcome Council's recommendation to grant a notice of decision for this proposal. More than happy to answer any questions, and thank you again for your time.
Oh, that was nice and brief. Thank you, Mr. Cook. Any questions for Mr. Cook, councillors? I note there are none. Thank you, Mr. Cook. Now, we have received a further 3 submissions to be read out on behalf of the members of the public. I'll call the name of each member of the public and refer to the General Manager, City Strategy and Sustainable Development to read a summary of the submissions. A copy of all statements will be published in full on Council's website tomorrow, and I wanted to note that councillors have had a copy. Thank you. First up is Norma Walker, 6.2, 54 to 60 St Kilda Road, St Kilda.
Through you, Madam Chair, Norma Walker states, I object to the proposal to construct a 7-storey office building at 54 to 60 St Kilda Road, St Kilda on the following grounds. Excessive scale of development. Number 1, the building height exceeds the applicable discretionary height limit of 6 storeys, and there is no justification for the excess under DDO 27. Point 2, the single-storey street wall proposed for the St Kilda Road frontage is inadequate in that it does not reflect the scale, heritage and architectural distinction of the existing St Kilda Road frontages. Both street walls should only be 2 to 3 storeys. The proposed building will, to an excessive degree, overlook the adjoining and nearby residential premises and their private open spaces. Appropriate screening of windows and decks should be a condition of permit as a minimum. Congestion, noise and waste management is another issue. Seeks enormous dispensation from the requirements of clause 52.06. It will have, with a shortfall of 114 car spaces, approximately 56%, where are visitors to the site going to park this much office space? And 3 retail shop fronts will create double parking. There is no provision for allocated spaces for service vehicles. There is no on-site loading facility. No waste management report is included with the application and advertising. The current plan does not provide for separate toilet facilities for the retail spaces. In conclusion, this present proposal represents an overdevelopment of the site. It provides no visual cohesion to this area and is out of step with the street wall and building heights around it, overwhelming the adjoining properties in terms of bulk and scale. The proposal is in excess of the Council's development framework from a scale, parking and design perspective. Would you like me to continue with the others?
So now 6.3 we'll ask, which is on 5 Prentice Street, St Kilda East. We've got submission by Chris Connell.
Through you, Madam Chair. Chris wrote, site car parking is a valuable asset to the owner-occupier. On-site car parking is a valuable asset to neighbours and the City of Port Phillip. I have been designing for over 30 years with experience in interior and architectural projects. Internal layout and configuration is critical from the initial brief through to construction completion, and on-site parking is an important factor. The City of Port Phillip's Integrated Transport Strategy document 2018-2028 Move, Live, Connect states on page 10 our road networks are finite and we have limited ability to increase on-street car parking capacity, and if car ownership trends continue, there'll be a 24% increase in the number of cars owned in the City of Port Phillip. Our current supply of on-street car parking spaces is barely enough to meet current demands. It is the responsibility of the designer architect to offer the best solution by applying their experience, principles of the planning guidelines, i.e. Res Code, and ensure the designer has explored all avenues to achieve and provide a good design outcome for the developer. Importantly, making effort to minimise or eliminate any impact to the neighbour's amenity and privileges and parking availability. From the current approved drawings and on-site built conditions, the long room, second bedroom of each dwelling, and layout of the bathrooms and passage, one would presume it was always the intention to divide this second bedroom, creating a third. From my experience, given the size of the blocks from both Prentice and Leslie Streets, the applicant could have provided 3 bedrooms plus the required 2 on-site car parking spaces, being it tandem or stacker options, and complied with Res Code. From the outset, 2014, the architect had the opportunity to design responsibly and appropriately. Now, with the project in its final stage of completion, the applicant requires an extra bedroom and a waiver to on-site car spaces to each dwelling. In brief, Res Code states 2 bedroom require 1 on-site car space, 3 bedrooms require 2 on-site car spaces. Is the parking waiver warranted, as stated in the City of Port Phillip report to this application? Given the sensitivity to this application and the number of objectors to waiver the on-site car parking space to each dwelling, I trust Council will take serious consideration of the Res Code guidelines regarding 2 and 3 bedroom developments with appropriate car parking requirements and not support this application. End of statement.
Yes, it's a long one.
Yes.
And now we have the final one, which is 6.7101 Salmon Street, Port Melbourne. And it is from Claire. And I don't know how to pronounce this surname, I have to say. It's a name without any vowels. Size, I'm going to do myself a disservice. I'll spell it, SZYMCZYK. Claire.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Claire writes, we'd like to thank the officers for their work on this application and their recommendation for support. We have worked hard to address Council's previous concerns and are confident that the amended proposal before you will contribute positively to Fisherman's Bend. This amended application provides the opportunity to bring the project in line with the recast vision for the Wirraway precinct. The proposal now includes significant social community benefits and represents a high-quality design that will continue to the public realm and contribute to the public realm and assist in the transition of the area to a vibrant, mixed-use and family-friendly precinct. End.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rozek. Okay, so that's the end of public question time and submissions, councillors. We'll move to item 5, which is councillor question time. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers? Councillor Pearl.
Thanks, Mayor. I've been contacted by a number of residents this week who have proactively placed signs on their properties highlighting and educating locals on the council's budget position. Their concerns stem from a council local laws officer visiting their properties this week, informing them that
Point of order. Is this to do with planning?
Yes.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Crawford. It is a local law issue that relates to heritage, so it is a planning issue, as I understand that. Can I just have some clarification, Ms. Rozek, that that's correct?
Sorry, it just seemed something.
Could I finish the question before I get ruled on?
No, we know the subject.
Through you, Madam Mayor, if it relates to a planning matter or planning condition, it is appropriate for the planning committee meeting.
It's relating to a signs in a heritage area.
My question's in relation to the planning scheme. Perhaps I'll complete the question and you can rule if it's in or out of order.
Okay, well, you know the rules, Councillor Pearl, that when a point of order is said, that you must stop all conversations, all communications until it is ruled on. I hope that you will, just obey those. Thank you. So I will allow it because I do understand that it is on a planning matter. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll start again. I have been contacted by a number of residents this week who have proactively placed signs on their properties highlighting and educating locals on the council's budget position. Their concerns stem from a local laws officer visiting their properties this week, informing them that they were liable for an $800 fine if the signs were not immediately removed, as they did not have a planning permit under the heritage provisions of our planning regulations. I think Councillor Bond's got the sign here, probably not that clear. When residents asked the local laws officer what section of the Act or regulation the offence would be charged or fined under, the officer was not able to provide any details. The signs are of an educational nature and are sized approximately 60 centimetres by 40 centimetres. My primitive reading of the planning scheme, paragraph 52.05 to 10, indicates that the sign does not require a permit. My question is, can officers please inform council of the exact details of what permit is required for these signs to be temporarily installed at properties across the city under any one of the council's planning schemes? Thank you.
Mr. Borg, are you able to address that question,
Through
please?
you, Madam Chair, it's a question I would have to take on notice. I don't have the planning scheme with me, so I'd need to certainly consider it, and I haven't had this matter put to me as yet, so I'd need to have a look at the actual controls and actually look at the sign and what is on there. Traditionally, around this time of year, getting closer to an election, there are provisions for signs which promote a candidate or a party, and they're normally allowed to be up for 3 months prior to an election and need to be taken down 14 days after an election. So I would need to take that on notice and review the signage and the information that's been put.
Thank you, Mr. Borg. Any further questions, councillors? Okay, so then we'll move on to item 6, which is petitions and joint letters. And councillors, we have no petitions on the agenda tonight. So we'll move to the substantive items on the report, which is number 7. And are there any, so for each report, I'm going to ask if there's any questions for the report. And so we'll go first up to 6.1, which is the amendment C186, Port, Montague Commercial Precinct, which is permanent heritage controls, and the consideration of submissions. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers? If not, we have an officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover for that or something different? Councillor Copsey to move. Councillor Baxter to second. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Copsey? Councillor Baxter, would you like to speak to the motion? Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Then I'll put that motion under division and call upon each councillor's vote. First up, Councillor Bond.
For.
Councillor Brand.
For.
Councillor Copsey.
For.
Councillor Crawford.
For.
Councillor Gross.
For.
Councillor Pearl.
For.
Councillor Simic.
For.
Councillor Voss. For. Councillor Baxter.
For.
Thank you. That motion is unanimously carried. Item 6.2, which is 54 to 60 St Kilda Road, St Kilda. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers in relation to this report? I note there are none. Question from Councillor Crawford. Thank you.
I just wanted to take up the ones that were mentioned, and I can't remember the person's letter who was read out, but it was mentioned that there is no provision for loading bay or waste, but I just wanted to clarify. My understanding was, as part of the amendment, if this should pass, there would be a loading zone and the waste would be, a waste plan would be applied before the build started. Is that correct?
So that was from Ms. Norma Walker. And Mr. Borg, are you able to address that, or Mr. Beard?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll defer that question to Mr. Schuster.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's correct. There are 2 conditions which address those concerns, the relevant ones being condition number 1A, which reads that we require an amended plan to show a loading bay measuring at least 4.2 by 7.6 metres, and the condition number 18, which relates to the provision of a waste management plan.
Great, thank you very much.
And I believe Ms Norma Walker was a former City of St Kilda councillor. Thank you, Councillor Bond, for pointing that out. Any further questions, councillors? If not, we have an officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover for this or something different? Councillor Bond, you wanting to move that? You got in a bit early.
I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with the addition of one condition.
Okay, if you could please read your amendment.
That is to add in condition 1K, the maximum height of the building at any point no greater than 26 metres above natural ground level.
Okay, we'll just get that up on the screen. Can you just check that, Councillor Bond?
That's not my amendment.
Okay.
That's my amendment.
That one?
Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Bond has moved an alternative motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Pearl? Thank you, Councillor Pearl. So, Councillor Bond, would you please speak to your motion?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I actually like this building. I think it's a vast improvement on what was there previously, or the previous proposal that was approved a number of years ago. What has happened since then is that the planning scheme in that particular area has changed as a result of a lot of hard work and a lot of feedback from local residents, including the great Norma Walker, former City of St Kilda councillor. The height limit was introduced along St Kilda Road. So what we're seeking to do here is to allow the building to go up to that height limit, but not exceed it. A lot of work went into deciding that planning scheme. So I think it's appropriate that we allow buildings to go up to that height, but not exceed it. It's a very sensitive area. It backs onto a beautiful heritage tree-lined street, and I don't think we want those particular premises overshadowed by massive buildings, although we do need to allow some sort of development to occur in locations such as this. So I think allowing this building to go up to the height limit that's allowed under the DDO for that particular area, C122 I think it is a good outcome for the developer. It's also a good outcome for the residents, that they're not going to be overshadowed and overtowered by something that exceeds the allowable limit on that corner. Some of the other recommendations from officers, such as inclusion of loading bays, etc., will all deal with a number of the concerns that were raised at the consultation we held on this. So overall, I think with the addition of this particular clause, it's a very good outcome for both parties involved here.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Councillor Pearl, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thanks.
Councillor Brand, you would like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. I think this is a well-intentioned motion, but I am not going to support it on the grounds that this is a discretionary height limit, which allows for small adjustments where it is practically needed. The increase over the height is only 1.5 metres, which is half a floor. We're not allowing another floor, which so often happens that developers come and ask for 2, 3, 8, 10 more floors. That's not happening here. This is just the building just happens to fall in an odd way where the actual limit is, and I think it's quite reasonable to make the discretion that you would allow an extra half a floor to exist above the preferred height. The back of the only area where it is going to be higher than that is mainly along the front, and the bulk of the taller parts of the buildings are, I think, down to the level required, and the bits that will overshadow the residents behind, I think, maybe I should get an officer to clarify this, but I think the bits that will overshadow the residents behind are actually at the required, at the preferred maximum height, and they're not the taller bits at the front. So I just think in principle, I think it's really important that we protect the integrity of the preferred heights that we allow along the road, but I think this is within the bounds of sensible discretion and certainly won't have any deleterious effects on any citizens behind the building or elsewhere.
Thank you, Councillor Brand. Councillor Crawford, you have a clarifying question.
Yes, please, Mayor. I guess I'm just not understanding if we were to make the maximum height 26 metres, what does that actually, does that mean they have to remove a floor? I'm not quite sure of the implications for the building itself. Could I get officers to kind of give me an indication, please?
Mr. Beard or Mr. Borg?
Through you, Madam Chair, look, I'm not clear what that would do. It would actually obviously reduce the height of the building. I do want to clarify that 26 metres that I think is being referred to is the height of the approved building at seven stories. So that's the first bit. There would need to probably be a reduction in floor-to-ceiling heights at different points throughout the development. They'd probably need to drop in the vicinity of 300 millimetres or 30 centimetres each level. So that's not something that's supported for office development, so they often require higher floor-to-ceiling levels.
Thank you.
Okay. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion, for or against? Okay. Councillor Bond, would you like to close?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, councillors, then I'll put that motion again under division and we'll call upon each councillor's vote. Councillor Bond? Oh, sorry, Councillor Brand, my apologies.
Against.
Councillor Copsey?
Against.
Councillor Crawford?
Against.
Councillor Gross?
Four.
Councillor Pearl?
In favour.
Councillor Simic?
Against.
Councillor Voss? Against. Councillor Baxter?
Against.
Councillor Bond?
For.
That motion has failed. Okay. I just wouldn't mind some governance advice at this point in time, as we didn't have a foreshadowed motion here.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that motion was lost. You may wish to seek a councillor to move the officer's motion as it was listed. That's at the Mayor's discretion.
All right, then I'll do that. Councillors, is there anyone there to move?
Mayor, I've already indicated I'd like to move a motion.
Councillor Brand, to move?
I would like to move a motion with another additional clause in it, which is the other alt rec.
Okay.
Actually, but I want to modify.
All right. Well, would you please if we can get that up on the screen, and is it a rewrite or a little bit? Oh, geez. Councillor Brand's gone. Okay, we've got some technical problems. Councillor Brand.
Have we lost David, have we?
Yes, we've lost David.
I don't know enough about the motion to move it for him.
Yep. Okay.
I'm happy to move it for him, or second.
Councillor Brand is back. Okay.
I am back now. Back now.
We were wondering what to do.
Yes, I don't know what to do because there's nothing I can do about it.
Can you please move your...
Okay, my alternative motion for K, I will read not what's on the screen there, but what I would like to add to it. And it would read, revised architectural treatment of the rear facades to provide an improved architectural presentation to Charnwood Road and Octavia Street residential areas.
Okay, David, how does that look?
I would say it's architectural treatment of the rear facades, not to provide an improved architectural presentation
treatment.
No, that's right. Improved architectural presentation to Charnwood Road and Octavia Street residential areas. That's right, and cut out the other. Yeah, so that's perfect. Thank you.
So the other part can be removed because he didn't move that at all.
That's right.
Please.
Yes, just remove it.
Can you please remove the
crossed out bits don't need to be there at all.
Yep, because that won't. Yep, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
A seconder?
Yes.
Councillor Gross to second. Councillor Brand, please speak to your motion.
Okay.
Okay, he's frozen again. You're not,
Can the seconder speak and he have the end reply?
Okay. Yes, Councillor Gross, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, look, I will. I feel a bit of hubris speaking in when the mover hasn't spoken, but I'll have a go. So there were two concerns I had. First of all, I voted for Councillor Bond's amendment because I was concerned about taking a hard line on height controls. That's just me, but we lost that. The second concern is the protection of Charnwood Road, one of the most precious roads in our municipalities, particularly in the southern end. So it's a beautiful place with really important heritage precinct and tree planting. So when you look at the revised alternate motion, it's very general. It talks about merely revising the treatment rather than prescribing colour changes, more articulation, and other matters that you could try to prescribe. So I think it's fair to all parties and fair to the street in that it's very general and it relies on the discretion of our officers administering this particular application, which I'm happy to do. So I think it's a fair addition, and I urge us all to vote for it.
Thank you, Councillor Gross. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? I will also, just to state that I was quite persuaded early on in conversations with Councillor Brand that there was a large part of the wall which was completely blank. And, in that, I do think there needs to be some architectural treatment of that and not just treat it as though it's the rear of a building and that can turn its back on Charnwood and Octavia Streets. So I think that is certainly worthy of an addition to this amendment. Is Councillor Brand's back on yet? I can't see him at all now.
Poor old Brandy will be so upset.
Yeah. Councillor Bond, is it?
Yes, it is.
I can't tell which one it is that's saying that. So, Councillor Bond, thank you.
Yes, thank you. I won't be supporting this. I probably could bring myself to support it, even though it's not ideal. There is a massive shortfall in the parking. The dispensation we've given on the parking is going to have a great impact on the neighbouring area. But if it was an appropriate building of the appropriate height, i.e. it went up to the height limit of the area or the permit they currently have, I'd probably accept it. But given that's not going to be the case, there's just too much wrong with this building. Even though it is a lovely looking building, but it needs to be a lovely looking building that respects the neighbourhood. And I don't believe this lovely looking building does that, blends in and respects the heritage nature of the surrounding area. Therefore, I won't be supporting this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Would anyone else like to speak? Because we're waiting for Councillor Brand to come back in, and I'm not sure what we do if we don't have the mover in the meeting. We need to get some advice on that. I haven't had that one before, and I don't think that's in the...
Could I call a point of order, Madam Mayor, and just to suggest it might be within your power, as you said in the preamble, for us to have a brief adjournment. Might consider whether this is appropriate circumstances to do that.
Okay. And Ms Pearce, are you able to advise as well?
Through you, Madam Mayor, there's no determination that says the mover must speak to the motion or must close the motion. So it's where the Mayor or the Council wishes to adjourn the meeting to allow Councillor Brand time to reconvene, but there is nothing in the meeting procedure that determines a mover must speak to the item.
Okay, and what about be in the meeting?
Through you, Madam Mayor, there's no determination for that either.
Okay.
We're for it.
All right, then I think I think we should adjourn for 5 minutes, just to wait for him to come back on, if that's okay. So, councillors, if you could just turn off your screens for 5 minutes and come back on at 7:45. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, can you pull your mic down?
Yes.
Or up?
Right. I'm sorry about that. We don't know what happened.
Now, a number of councillors have spoken in favour and Councillor Bond has spoken against this item. We did continue.
Okay.
But would you like to speak to the motion?
I thought I did speak to the motion.
We didn't hear any of it.
Yeah.
Oh, you did? I didn't hear any of it. Really?
No, I didn't have anything down either. So please, just briefly, please.
Okay, I'll just try and remember what I said. Oh my God. Yes, I was saying I think this building has done quite a good job architecturally, especially with a few minor improvements that we have proposed. But I think it's a good architectural design for the situation, except when it comes to the rear of the building, where I think the architects and developers have dropped the ball, and the rear facades present a really quite an ugly aspect to the people who live at the back. And the area at the back there is Charnwood Road and Octavia Street. And Charnwood Road in particular is a heritage area and beautiful tree-lined streets, as the previous amendment was saying. And the people in these areas have fought this development for a long, long time, for years and years. It was an election issue 4 years ago, mainly on grounds of bulk and height, because it is quite a large intrusion into the street. I think that personally, I think this building has, and the new DDO in the area have struck a good compromise of the shape and size of the buildings, but nevertheless, it's a dominant building, and it is really a visual intrusion into the street. It is not a pleasant thing to see from the rear, and it needs to be architecturally upgraded to be something which is worth seeing. It needs to be articulated with signs of human habitation, signs of the pleasure, an appreciation of the pleasure of being there, whether it's windows, balconies, maybe greenery. Who knows how to do it? That's up to the architects, but it just needs to be thoroughly upgraded so that the people in these areas, when they're in a really important and beautiful residential area, are not offended by looking at it, but are actually seeing something which is, reasonably worth having there as the backdrop, the new backdrop of their street. So for that, I say this is what I think they'll just need to come back with revised designs of how they're going to treat the rear to be in some way commensurate with the main street facades, because this rear facade is actually a very, very important facade in the local area, and I think it's just been overlooked. And I think the architects are perfectly capable of doing that if given the direction to do it.
Thank you, Councillor Brand. I'll now put that motion under division. Councillor Brand.
4.
Councillor Copsey.
4.
Councillor Crawford.
4.
Councillor Gross.
4.
Councillor Pearl.
Abstain.
Councillor Simic.
4.
Councillor Voss. 4. Councillor Baxter.
4.
Councillor Bond.
Against.
That motion is carried. So we'll move on to item 6.3, which is 5 Prentice Street, St Kilda East. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers? If there are none, we have an officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover for that or something different? I'm happy to move. Do I have a seconder? Oh, Councillor Crawford to move. Councillor Copsey to second. Councillor Crawford, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, Mayor.
Councillor Copsey, would you like to speak to the motion? Would anyone else like to speak to the motion?
I'll just say one thing.
Councillor Gross?
So this is a situation where these rights, planning decisions, are not for the individual, they run with the title. So it doesn't matter whether you're Genghis Khan or a saintly person, the same planning merits should apply. But I was actually convinced by the applicant's speech that taking 2 rooms and making it into 3 smaller bedrooms for a family doesn't necessarily mean that one has to have a second garage. And I was persuaded by their credentials that they're already a 1-car family, and call me crazy, but that presentation actually swayed me. And I actually think that this, particularly given the officer's recommendation, is a reasonable approach. And I hear what the objectors say, and I regret speaking against them, but I just needed to give an explanation of why I'm voting in favour of the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Gross. Would anyone else like to speak? If not...
Yes, I've indicated that I would.
Okay. Councillor Brand?
Yes, I'll be voting in favour of it. I do think that the Mr. Connell's analysis of the plan, that the bedrooms as planned now seem to be the natural starting point of any architectural design on this building. But whether this, so I think it's it's been a little bit of a game played there. But whether it's led to anything bad, I can't really I don't really think so. I think there's obviously room to accommodate an extra car should it be needed. But the point, I think, also is if the street gets to the point where, which it no doubt will one day, where the parking is becoming more and more difficult and they have to put permit parking in, this new development will not get a permit. So even if it at the moment, I think they can fit in easily. If it gets worse, and they do need, and the people of the street do need to get permit parking, this property is going to miss out on that. So I think we've got sort of most bases covered reasonably well there.
Okay.
So I'm going to be voting for it.
Thank you, Councillor Brand. Okay, then I will now... Councillor Crawford, would you like to close? No, then I'll put that motion again under division. Councillor Copsey.
For.
Councillor Crawford.
For.
Councillor Gross.
For.
Councillor Pearl.
For.
Councillor Simic.
For.
Councillor Voss. For. Councillor Baxter.
For.
Councillor Bond.
For.
Councillor Brand.
For.
That motion is unanimously carried. Thank you. I'm going to skip the next one and we'll come back to that at last. 6.5 is 1 to 41 Buckhurst Street, South Melbourne. Councillors, are there any questions of the officers? If not, we have an officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover for that or something different? Councillor Copsey, a question?
I was just wondering if we could get the officer's recommendation on the screen.
It is on the screen.
Prentice Street?
No, this is
Buckhurst.
It's updated for us, Kat. The monitor's frozen for you.
We just did
Yes.
Prentice Street. Yeah, we're up to Buckhurst. Yeah, okay. So we've got that up on the screen. Thank you. So Councillor Crawford to move. Do I have a seconder? I'm happy to second.
I've just indicated I would second it. Are you not getting my...
No, I'm not, Councillor Brand. If you could just send it to all panellists, please.
I think I've... I'm sorry, yes.
All right, I'll Councillor Brand to... Councillor Baxter to second. Councillor Crawford, would you like to speak to the motion?
No.
Councillor Baxter, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Brand?
Yes, I just wanted just say a couple of things about this intriguing prospect of raising the footpaths, which I don't really understand how it's going to happen, but I understand that it's a very important issue for the longer term. And the answer that I heard part of from the applicant about how they're dealing with it, I think was a good answer. The bit that I heard, where it has a sacrificial part of the building which is down at street level now that may get flooded one day, but most of the ground floor is up at a higher level. And I do think it's a really clever way of looking at it and of doing it. And maybe if the footpaths are raised, all of those ground floors will become the same height and still be rather well proportioned ground floors. The only question that I had that wasn't answered is in the treatment of the actual facades of the awnings along the front of the building. They seem to be cut very, very low to the ground, so that the height of the ground floor looks like it's even a lower floor to ceiling, as articulated by the awnings, than the floors above. And I think that's something which may be discussed in the negotiations which are about to proceed. And I just want to throw that in as as a thought for people. I just don't really understand that. But on the whole, I think these buildings are very well, look like they're going to be very well detailed and articulated and thought through. And I think they'll be a good addition to the city in this part, especially in comparison to some of the other monsters which have been proposed. So I'll be voting for it.
Thank you, Councillor Brand. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? I'll also just say a few words of mostly of which Councillor Brand, had this similar sentiments to me. I think this is a very good design. I'm very pleased that the architects have done such a good job on this. Flooding remains a very big concern in this particular area in Fisherman's Bend in the Montague Precinct, and I'm very pleased to hear the applicant talk so willingly about being flexible around what they need to do in order to come up with a good design that meets community needs, interfaces well with the street frontage, yet can handle flooding or deal with flooding if that's a problem around there. I am concerned and remain concerned about the period of affordability. This council has a position that it's infinitum. There is no time limit, and our preference in this particular application from the officers is 30 years. But I do want to thank the applicants for abiding and conforming with the requirements of the planning scheme of the framework. We need more affordable housing. So just on that, I'm very happy to support this application and wish you all the best in going to the Standing Advisory Committee with your next step. Councillor Crawford, would you like to close? No?
No, thank you.
When there's no other speakers, I will then put that motion. All those in favour and under division? Councillor Gross?
For.
Councillor Pearl?
For.
Councillor Simic?
For.
Councillor Voss? For. Councillor Baxter?
For.
Councillor Bond?
For.
Councillor Brand?
For.
Councillor Copsey?
For.
Councillor Crawford?
For.
That motion is unanimously carried. Well done. Item 6.6, it's 134 Ferras Street, South Melbourne. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers? There are none. We have an officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover for that or something different? No, I'm happy to move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Baxter to second. I'll speak at the end. Councillor Baxter, would you like to speak?
No, thank you.
Councillor Brand, would you like to speak? You're on mute. You're still on mute. There you go. Try again, Councillor Brand.
Is that mute or unmute
yes,
now?
I can hear you now.
Oh my goodness. Well, look, no, I'm just happy with. I'm happy with the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Then I'll put that motion. All those in favour, and again under division. Councillor Pearl.
For.
Councillor Simic.
For.
Councillor Voss. For. Councillor Baxter.
For.
Councillor Bond.
For.
Councillor Brand.
For.
Councillor Copsey.
For.
Councillor Crawford.
For.
Councillor Gross.
For.
That motion is unanimously carried. Item 6.7 is 101 Salmon Street, Port Melbourne. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers? Note there are none. We have an officer's recommendation, councillors. Can I have a mover for that or something different? I am happy to move that one again. Do I have a seconder? Oop. Flood of seconds. Councillor Crawford to second. I'll speak last. Councillor Crawford, would you like to speak?
No, Mayor.
Would anyone else like to speak to this motion?
Sorry.
So, oh dear. Councillor Pearl, is it?
Sorry, just working out the mute button. I should have asked this as a question, but there's just a small error in the report under 2 Ward, which is Wirraway. I presume that should be Gateway, but otherwise I'm happy to support the motion, but I should have brought that up. Perhaps as it's not an amendment to the motion or anything, just a small error in the report, but happy to vote for this one. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Pearl. Councillor Brand.
Yes, I'm happy to vote for it. I think on the whole it's a meritorious development. I've got there are potential problems with it that need sorting out, and I think the recommendations are going to do that with the lanes, with the depicted paving and footpath along the side, and one of the images is not a satisfactory situation with a 800 wide footpath and a gutter to a lane. I hope that gets sorted out as either a shared lane, a lane which is shared with cyclists and pedestrians, or that the footpath is expanded further. And the same with the sorting out at the rear, the widened footpath. I think the widened lane at the rear, I think, is a really important part. I've got some architectural gripes with it. I think that all of the upper stories are all articulated as being sort of highly structured and actually an interesting decorative pattern made out of structure. And the ground floor, with its just sheet glass and plain awning, doesn't have any structural weight at all. And I would recommend that the architects devise some form of looking like the ground floor is being held up rather than just floating on air, which will give all of the structural forms upstairs much more credibility as actual structural forms rather than just pure stuck-on decoration. It's just a grammatical thing that nobody else is going to be interested in, so I'm not voting for or against it. I just hope that that may be taken into consideration by somebody who cares about that. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Brand. Anyone else who want to speak to this motion? I'll just lastly speak as well. I'm very happy with this application and also with the amendments and conditions that the officers have put on it. Also want to point out the affordable housing that's been allocated in this particular proposal, and the fact that it'll go to women's housing, which I think is a lovely touch, if I can put it like that. So thank you very much to the applicant for that. I do agree with Councillor Brand in relation to the footpath and the I do have concerns around the pedestrian and the shared path area around the side laneway, and making sure that it fits everyone and works well in that particular area. But overall, I think with the new conditions, it'll go very well. So thank you very much. Then I'll put that motion under division once again. First up, I'll ask Councillor Simic. What's your vote?
Thank you. Nice to be first this time. 4.
Thank you. Councillor Voss, 4. Councillor Baxter?
4.
Councillor Bond?
4.
Councillor Brand?
4.
Councillor Copsey?
4.
Councillor Crawford?
4.
Councillor Gross?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Pearl?
4.
That motion is unanimously carried. Now, as I indicated before, we'll go to item 6.4, which is the statutory planning delegated decisions for May 2020. Councillor Pearl?
Your conflict.
I, Councillor Marcus Pearl, declare a conflict in relation to this item based on a planning permit that I have under my property, which was approved under delegation during the month of May. So I'll now remove myself from the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pearl. Councillors, we have an officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover for that or something different? Councillor Gross to move and Councillor Copsey to second. Councillor Gross, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Councillor Copsey, would you like to speak to the motion? Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Then I will put that motion under division and call upon each councillor's vote. Councillor Crawford.
For.
Councillor Gross.
For.
Councillor Simic.
For.
Councillor Voss. For. Councillor Baxter.
For.
Councillor Bond.
For.
Councillor Brand.
For.
Councillor Copsey.
For.
That motion is unanimously carried. Councillor Pearl, can you come back in? It's already in? Okay. All right, now we'll move to item 8, which is urgent business. Councillors, do we have any items of urgent business tonight? There are none. Item 9, which is confidential matters. Councillors, do we have any confidential items? No, we don't. Okay, so there being no further business tonight, I declare the meeting closed. Good night.